I'm Cindy McMahon, co-chair of the Historic Pullman House Tour.
And I'm Pat Brannon, the other co-chair of the Historic Pullman House Tour.
Welcome to Historic Pullman, and thank you for joining us today for this virtual celebration of the Pullman House Tour. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we had to make the difficult decision of canceling this year's house walk to ensure the safety of our homeowners, volunteers, and visitors.
Each year, the Historic Pullman Foundation and the Pullman Civic Organization join forces to present its annual house tour. This year, in a light of current circumstances, we're doing a special virtual tour so that you can enjoy the Pullman neighborhood and its beautiful homes in your own time and in your own home.
This year will have marked the 47th annual Historic Pullman House Tour. This would have been the 31st year that I've had the honor and the privilege of co-chairing this event. I've enjoyed every minute of it.
In 1973, neighborhood residents decided that they needed to educate the public about the cultural and historical significance of the Pullman neighborhood. And that's when the first house tour was born.
It was a single-day event. It was such a success that the following year and since then, it has been expanded to a 2-day event. Now, let's review some of the community history. Touring Pullman on a glorious fall afternoon is like a walk back in time. You can almost take yourself back into the 1880s at a time when Pullman's workers were discovering what it was like to live in the world's most perfect town.
In Pullman, there were nearly 1,800 residences constructed of brick in the Queen Anne style of architecture. Every house had indoor plumbing, and every room had windows for healthful, fresh air and light. The lawns, gardens, and tree-lined streets were all maintained by the town maintenance department. There was a large sports field for cricket and baseball, and grandstands for observing sports like track and field and rowing in Lake Calumet.
There was a school with a large play yard. There were shops for fresh meat and produce in the market hall and stores for goods and other commodities in the arcade, along with a bank, a post office, a 1,000-seat theater, offices, and meeting rooms for use by nearly 40 clubs, societies, and churches.
The first church in Pullman, the Greenstone, was built as a non-denominational structure and was first occupied by a Presbyterian congregation. By 1894, there were 8 religious denominations in Pullman, several of which built churches on Pullman land just to the west of the town.
The many amenities found in Pullman were unknown to many working-class families of the day. About half of Pullman's workforce lived within the town, paying an average rent of $14 per month from an annual wage of $624. Workers who did not live in Pullman either rented outside of Pullman or built houses in the communities to the west of Pullman. By February 1882, Pullman was home to over 2,000 people, and by September 1892, the resident population had grown to 11,702 men, women, and children.
The town of Pullman welcomed visitors from around the world during the 1893 Columbian Exposition, but the town would soon become an epicenter for the growing labor movement as workers organized in an attempt to flex their muscles against the power of big business. Following the Pullman strike of 1894, which was the first nationwide labor action, the United States recognized Labor Day as a national holiday. In 1898, the Illinois Supreme Court ordered the Pullman Company to sell all non-industrial holdings in the town of Pullman. By 1907, the majority of the non-industrial properties had been sold, most often to the tenant Pullman employee, at a price set at 100 times the monthly rent, which had remained fixed over time at $14 per month.
While the majority of Pullman's original residential structures remain today, the population is now just a small fraction of what it was in 1892. And today, most homes are owner-occupied.
In fact, when someone buys a Pullman house, it's not unusual for us to find out that they may have been on a house tour in the previous year or years even further back. They saw the great architecture, the great history, the cultural amenities in the neighborhood, but most importantly, the sense of community that is so evident during that house tour weekend.
We actually had not heard that much about historical Pullman, but we were going on a lot of house tours, and Pullman was one of the tours. And it was 2013, and we were just, I don't know, fascinated, totally fascinated by the history, by the architecture, but mostly by the people that we met, you know, the docents and some of the houses, people who were waiting to go on house tour who lived here. And we just felt a sense of community.
Again, we were looking for a place to relocate. We were considering moving to Chicago. And then when we got out here, we found that it was available to us. We did some research about the neighborhood and the local area where things were. So it's just an outstanding community. And the only way we got into it was the door was open when we came to house tour.
The funds raised at the annual house tour have been used over the years to support restoration projects on Pullman's public structures, including the Hotel Florence, the Greenstone Church, and the Florence Loudon Miller Center. Definitely, Pullman's crown jewel is the Hotel Florence. The Hotel Florence was built at a cost of $100,000 and opened in November of 1881 with 65 guest rooms. Named for George Pullman's favorite daughter, Florence, the hotel served as a showplace of the town. Many visitors doing business with the Pullman Company and those who came to tour his model town stayed there. After the company ceased operations of the town, the Hotel Florence went into private ownership. It was being used as a rooming house when, in 1975, its owners wanted to sell all of the original furniture and woodwork. Neighborhood residents took action, and with the assistance of George Pullman's granddaughter, Florence Loudon Miller, the Historic Pullman Foundation purchased the building to save the original furnishings and the hotel from potential demolition. Until 2000, the foundation operated a museum and restaurant in the Hotel Florence, attracting thousands of visitors. In 2001, the state of Illinois began extensive stabilization and restoration of the Hotel Florence. Major structure repairs and system upgrades have been completed, which will preserve the building for years to come.
And then there's the Greenstone Church. It was built at a cost of $57,000. The exterior facade is made of serpentine stone quarried in Pennsylvania. The sanctuary is unchanged today. All of the cherry wood that comprises the altar and the pews are original, as is the Steer and Turner manual tracker pipe organ. Today, the Greenstone Church is suffering the effects of time, with significant deterioration occurring to the soft serpentine stone. Work continues to find resources to support the church's efforts to stabilize the existing conditions and restore the building.
The original Market Hall was destroyed by fire in 1892. The second Market Hall, along with adjacent townhouses and colonnaded apartment houses, were completed in 1893. A gymnasium and meeting halls were housed on the upper level. During the Columbian Exposition, these unique residents provided additional guest accommodations for the many company visitors. The second Market Hall was nearly destroyed by fire in 1973. The Historic Pullman Foundation purchased the fire-guttered property in 1974. In the years since, the foundation undertook a $1.3 million stabilization project and continues to explore future uses and funding to return the significant property to an economically viable use. The Pullman factory buildings were the main part of Pullman's Palace Car Company. Once adorned in front by the man-made lake vista, the buildings were beautifully designed and landscaped with an abundance of natural light and ventilation for the workers. The Pullman Company was one of the first to utilize an assembly line, each building having its own function and purpose to construct the cars in an orderly and methodical fashion. In 1907, large additions were added to the front and sides of the buildings to accommodate steel car construction. In 1957, these buildings were sold off for use as a warehouse, and many of the remaining 19th century factory buildings were demolished.
In 1998, a night I will never forget, an arsonist fire nearly destroyed the clock tower and administration building.
I see them rebuilding it and still going ahead with the transportation museum, the railroad museum. I feel very positive, a lot more positive today than I was last night as I watched it burn to the wee hours of the morning from my window.
Following a citizens-led campaign to save the building and with the state of Illinois funding, the tower and the clock were rebuilt, and the governor's task force recommended future use as a cultural tourism resource. In 2015, the clock tower was designated a national monument under the administration of the National Park Service, and boundaries were established for the Pullman National Monument District. Construction work to establish a National Park Service visitor center in the clock tower building and museum campus is underway and is expected to open to the public in the fall of 2021.
One of the most interesting things about the Pullman neighborhood is the variety of housing sizes and styles. Each house had incredible amenities, not necessarily available to most working class families at the time. Some were 3-story, some are small flats with simply 3 rooms, but they were available for employees at the company. Homes along 111th Street were rented by executives within the company as they were closest to the plant. Exterior and interior detail, not found in many other Pullman homes, made this row a showplace. The spacious homes surrounding Arcade Park were also considered very desirable and were occupied by foremen, store owners, professionals, and other company officials. All the homes within the community were built in the Queen Anne style with variation in the facades to avoid monotony. Most houses boasted mansard roofs, and most of those were covered in slate. A number of homes had other wooden or limestone decorative elements. Many residents have restored their homes to their 1880s appearance. Residents continue to restore the exteriors of their Pullman homes and adaptively restore and renovate the interiors to provide contemporary homes for modern families.
Well, the nice thing about coming to the house tour is that you get to see how people, several different kinds of people lived. You can see houses that were just, little cottages where fairly humble families lived, and you can see cottages where the more affluent people lived. Pullman is a lovely, lovely historic area in Chicago, but it is also so friendly and so neighborly. And I think that's not something that people hear about very often. There are not very many places where people shovel each other's walks. They might mow their neighbors' lawns and pull their neighbors' weeds and have dinner at their neighbors' houses. It is a lovely, charming, cohesive, small town-like atmosphere.
We hope you enjoyed this virtual celebration of House Tour.
And mark your calendar for October 9th and 10th, 2021 for our next in-person house tour. Thank you.